Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with your WWE Backlash 2024 instant analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here just minutes after WWE Backlash went off the air from Lyon, France, to break down everything that happened on WWE's first premium live event since WrestleMania 40. Now, the Silver King is here, taking you all the way through the end of the show. Vintage Chris Vanini will join to discuss the main event. He is currently away from home. He has a family engagement to go to. He was able to watch the entirety of Backlash. He was not able to sit down and tape the entire podcast. You will hear main event thoughts from him. You will get his final grade on the show, and you will hear the remainder of his takes from Backlash this coming Tuesday on the next WWE edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Before we get to everything, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. Twitter at Getting Overcast is also where you can vote in our pre and post-show polls surrounding premium live events and pay-per-views. We let you have your voice heard, and we factor that in to our post-show analysis. So again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Over head. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, instant reactions, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling. We do it for Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown every single week. And we give you exclusive news posts every single Friday. And anyone who is currently a subscriber can tell you that we hit the nail on the head for those. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Now, this is the normal juncture of the show where the Silver King and Vintage, we would crack open cold ones. But because I'm going to be doing most of the talking on today's show, I'm not going to crack open a cold beer and let it sit next to me getting warm. That doesn't make any sense. So we're going to have to bring it back for WWE King and Queen of the Ring later this month. We're going to get right into the instant analysis. Before I welcome Vintage Chris Vanini, still waiting for him to sign on, let me just briefly discuss the French crowd in Lyon over the last 48 hours. What they accomplished during SmackDown and Backlash, it might be unmatched in WWE history. There have been amazing professional wrestling crowds that I've been part of, and certainly that I've watched on television. The WrestleMania 17 crowd was phenomenal. There are numerous other individual WrestleMania, individual live event crowds that have been fantastic. WCW back in the day had some wild crowds. Obviously, the Attitude Era had its share of crazy crowds. I cannot remember a gathering of fans being this loud, this vocal, and this consistent, with the exception of literally one act. And we'll talk about that on Tuesday's WWE episode. But as consistently loud and boisterous as this crowd was, not just for Backlash on Saturday, but for SmackDown on Friday, there is a legitimate argument to make that this was the greatest crowd in WWE history and maybe even professional wrestling history. That is how ridiculously hot these fans in Lyon, France were over the last 2 days. So I wanted to say that right off the bat. Kudos to them. They deserve their own special acknowledgement.
Acknowledge.
Big acknowledgement right there.
Acknowledge.
And we are going to talk about them more during this show, and we'll certainly discuss them more on Tuesday's WWE edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, where we will break down everything else that happened on SmackDown that is not discussed today, along with, of course, everything that transpires from Monday Night Raw. So let's jump right into the WWE Backlash instant analysis. As mentioned, Vintage Chris Vanini is joining us for the opening segment here. We're going to start with the main event of the show. We're going to go through and break down all 5 matches on the card based more on order of importance than order they actually happened on the screen. We're going to break down all of that and then drop you a final grade for WWE Backlash at the end of this show. So we're kicking off where Backlash ended with the WWE Championship, Cody Rhodes defending against AJ Styles. Now, Cody mentioned on the Backlash kickoff, which happened Friday afternoon, that Styles was a former leader of the Bullet Club. Then he offered Too Sweet. AJ declined it. So Michael Cole did it with him, which was pretty fun. Then on SmackDown, you're going to hear me repeat this a lot on the show. The crowd went absolutely effing wild for Cody. They sang his entire entrance, both verses and the chorus, not just the bridge. This face-to-face with AJ main evented. Styles claimed that Rhodes isn't focused. Cody said he knows him well and idolized him growing up, which pissed AJ off, leading him to claim he's still in his prime. Styles said their paths are not the same, like Cody claimed last week. Everyone wanted Dusty's son, while he had to grind just to get to WWE. He even talked about Cody quitting, making a Stardust reference with his hands, saying he was never so fortunate as to have an opportunity that valuable to walk away from himself. Styles criticized Rhodes for having legends get his back just so he could finish his story. A bunch of people that he, by the way, has already defeated. Well, except The Undertaker, obviously. The crowd actually cheered AJ fighting his way to the top and then went nuts when he dropped phenomenal, which I've come to understand is a trigger word for French fans. It's part of a really popular song and chant that they use. Cody repeated that he respects AJ and thinks he's phenomenal, but he's going into the match thinking about how Styles is his first challenger and how that is Too Sweet. This time, Styles held up Too Sweet, and when Cody went to dap him, AJ just smacked him straight up across the face. This was everything on SmackDown that last week's contract signing was not. And as we assumed on the Ultimate Preview, it's the reason why that first meeting was so boring and uneventful. They wanted to do the real storytelling in France 24 hours before Backlash. As mentioned Tuesday, this still felt to me at this juncture like a multi-month storyline that was just kicking off. Styles was unironically phenomenal on the mic. He laid out his case. He created a clear agenda against Rhodes. Cody flexed his confidence as well. That's exactly what he needed and what we needed to juice up this match as a main event for a premium live event, which it always felt that way because both guys are stars, but it wasn't really that exciting going into Friday. Also, the Too Sweet about face, that was a great through line from the kickoff to SmackDown itself. Chris, what did you think about this main event segment from SmackDown?
It was good. It was much better than everything we'd gotten before. It was much needed. And I hadn't realized, really, I think until this promo, that AJ had wrestled Dusty back in TNA in 2001.
Yep, one time.
That match is on YouTube, by the way. I went and watched it. It's a complete 2001 TNA mess. But man, I feel like that could have been the whole storyline, from the moment AJ won, or even when he was a number one contender. Like, I beat Dusty, I'm gonna beat Cody. Like, I know it's a TNA thing, and they probably don't want to lean into it too much, but not many people have wrestled or beaten Cody and Dusty. I think the list is Randy Orton and maybe one or two other people. I think that would have been really cool. But either way, it was good. It finally got some juice going into the match.
Were you far more excited going into it than you were a week prior, and even when we discussed it on the Ultimate Preview?
Oh yeah, completely. And we figured we'd probably get that on the Go Home SmackDown since that contract signing was pretty uneventful.
One of multiple times across SmackDown and Backlash itself that WWE delivered either what we expected or what we hoped. And that was really positive across the board. So AJ got the phenomenal song chanted at him after his entrance, and the crowd was 100% on target with Kingdom, to the point that it completed the second verse of the song after the music stopped playing ahead of Samantha Irvin's announcements. And it was so awesome that I actually want to go ahead and just play that for you briefly. I mean, they sang this like it was the national anthem. It's unbelievable what this crowd did throughout the entire show on Saturday, throughout the entire show on Friday. It's almost without words trying to describe how amazing they were. Legitimate goosebumps here. They sang Phenomenal again after AJ's announced, and they shook the camera while doing so. Then they did Cody's full announce alongside Samantha. Jessica Carr was the referee, the first woman to officiate a WWE Championship main event match. Could have sworn that she did one before, but I guess not. It was basically a football crowd at the bell here. It was ridiculous. Cody smacked AJ back and did the Stardust cartwheel as receipts from SmackDown. Then he did a gourd buster on Styles. I haven't seen that in a long time. AJ worked the shoulder from the Carmelo Hayes match. Cody got knees up on a lion salt. Styles came back with a neck breaker over the knee. The crowd was a bit overzealous, singing unrelated songs at certain times during the match, similar to what would happen in a football match. It was the only time on the entire show that they tried to put themselves over beyond playing along with the show itself. Cody ate a hard release suplex on the ring apron, but caught Styles running for a powerbomb through the French announce table. Each did some signatures with Cody hitting the bionic elbow. Styles prevented Cody cutter. They did a tombstone counters. Rhodes took a turnbuckle suplex. AJ hit a perfect springboard 450 for a 2 count. And then a freaking burning hammer for a 1 count that Cody kicked out of. Rhodes came back with a Cody cutter. Styles countered Crossroads into a Pele kick. Cody halted Phenomenal forearm with a super kick, moved into a Kimura lock. That was a real interesting callback to Brock Lesnar. Not the best execution, but still the fact that he did it. Each finisher was prevented before Cody hit a super Escalera Cody cutter and added Crossroads to retain the championship. This was straight up excellent from bell to bell. And the atmosphere on top made it so damn unique. Fantastic storytelling, both playing into their recently heated feud and their respective histories. Wouldn't have minded Cody taking a Styles Clash for a false finish. Also, didn't love the Burning Hammer kick out at 1, but that's not a fully established move in WWE like it is elsewhere, so it was okay. At the same time, it was really nice to see a single Crossroads win the match after he started spamming them over the last 2 years. As I've been saying, AJ needs to stop with any of this retirement bullshit. The guy is still one of the best bell-to-bell wrestlers in WWE. He is in phenomenal shape. Cody looked great as well. Everything he needed to be in his first legitimate major title defense, he executed that. I'm not so sure about the prior opinion I held of them doing a multi-match series because this went squeaky clean at the end. But perhaps AJ can note that Cody just barely caught him with one move, and otherwise it was even between them, so he wants another shot. For anyone who had been talking about Cody's title reign being underwhelming to this juncture, well, first, it's idiotic because it's been a month. But this easily proved otherwise. I went 4.75 stars A+. I may well go full 5 stars on rewatch. Too much was happening for me to soak it all in. I want to watch unencumbered, not writing notes, not doing anything. This was an A+ match and an excellent main event for this show.
Yeah, I definitely give it an A match. I think I would have loved more false finishes to get it to that A+ range for me. I mean, did AJ kick out of a single Crossroads?
No, I don't think he took it until the final.
I'm the one who's always on here saying I hate how the 3 Crossroads in a row has to finish somebody. But I would have liked to have some other Crossroads in the match that he kicks out of.
Or maybe he rolls out of the ring. He takes one and rolls out of the ring to avoid a pinfall, something like that.
You can do, without doing 3 in a row, you can do Crossroads and either he kicks out or he rolls out or something like that. So that was, again, it's nitpicky. This match was incredible. It was really good. It was everything we wanted to this. And it was everything we love about Cody Rhodes. You know, like, you think about the Cody Rhodes and big matches we've got this year, it's not much. One was the Royal Rumble. He didn't wrestle in Elimination Chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Night 1 of WrestleMania was a tag match. And night 2 had all that interference at the end. Like, just straight singles match, championship match, bell to bell. Like, you could see, oh yeah, this is why Cody is the guy. This is why he's the champion. This is why he's been tasked with carrying the company. Because he can do this in this big moment. And like you said, AJ was incredible. The retirement talk end of the year stuff makes no sense to me. I thought it was cool. I think it was Corey Graves who mentioned during the introduction that AJ was first person to win the WWE Championship outside of North America, which he did in Manchester, England. I don't know if it was first or only, but that's a remarkable stat. And again, something I think he could have built up even more. I had no idea. That was really cool. I was hoping when AJ kind of had Cody up there for it looked like a tombstone pile driver or something like that. I kind of wish he had done it, you know, like AJ didn't beat Taker, but he could say he retired The Undertaker, like,
Mhm.
even though he lost the match, Taker's done, he retired, he's done after that. I think that would have been, really cool as well, but, yeah, I came out of this thinking this was an incredible match, and I'd like to see more of them. Even though it was a squeaky clean finish, like you said, if we want to get to the next one, if they do one, how do you do it? Maybe AJ just sneak attacks him on SmackDown to set up another one or something, or attacks him, breaks an arm or something like that. Like we wondered, could AJ win? Could Cody win via DQ here, or could he attack post match? None of that obviously happened. I think it's still on the table. I came out of this thinking like these guys were great together. I still think there's a lot of story you can tell.
Yeah.
And these guys are going to put on great matches, so I hope it's not the end of it.
Yeah, it's frustrating with some of Cody's reign where he went into those 3-match series where it's just like you roll your eyes like getting this again. Brock Lesnar, Shinsuke Nakamura, Seth Rollins, they were never ending. This is one where it was put together so quickly that I am still left wanting more, despite the fact that they had an incredible match. The question is, if they did another match and they do it, let's say at King and Queen of the Ring, is it going to live up to this one? I don't know that it will. Maybe it needs a stipulation or something.
They won't have the same crowd.
That's the problem. All these matches on this show, if you took this exact show and you put it in like Hartford, Connecticut, you're like, oh, okay, it was a fine premium live event. You're not going crazy about it. That crowd helped a lot of matches over-deliver. I'm not saying it helped this one over-deliver because this was fantastic either way, but it took it to another level. Chris, before you get out of here, I know your time is limited. Cody Rhodes just said this on the Backlash post-show press conference.
I've only scratched the surface, perhaps, with AJ Styles. I don't know if we'll revisit that, but that's the type of fight I'd love to get into one more time. And he left a little ding on my shoulder that perhaps I'd like to return the favor. But there's a lot of folks. I'll tell you one that maybe is a little strange. And not going to sound strange, but I'd love. I mean, man, I could name everybody, but LA Knight is somebody that I look at because I get it. They're two good guys. Well, I understand that, but there's a flavor there. There's something about it, and it's like I was saying to you. When you got that fever, you got to know. You want to know. No. I'm the man. No, I'm the man. All that just macho, toxic, alpha stuff that I still have a bit of, I suppose. But there's so many. And there's probably new faces that we don't even know. And I'm not going to say his name. He had a birthday the other day, but he returned a gift to me that I did not appreciate. And when that man returns, I'd like to take something from him as well. So
it was that last bit I wanted you to hear. He basically just told us that The Rock returned the Rolex that he gifted him at WrestleMania, which ties the loop on what that handoff was at the end of that segment, Chris. So I just wanted to get you in. I wanted you to hear that because that is something that developed right after the show. And I know you have to go right now, but any thoughts on that right away?
No, that's interesting. Yeah, keeps that open. And, look, shoulder injury. There we go. Do some more AJ Cody. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And I also hope that the American crowd somehow picks up on that phenomenal chant because that was hilarious. But we'll see.
Chris is back out again. So the Silver King is continuing solo from here. I had one other note on this match. I kept wondering as I watched really this entire weekend, whether WWE knew about the response that the word phenomenal would get. And if that's why this match was booked, or if it was truly a happy accident, given Styles was a really strong first opponent for Rhodes either way. I mean, AJ Styles could have wiped his ass with a baguette and gotten cheered during this show. It didn't matter what he did. It was awesome to hear. I'm glad AJ got that response beyond the fact that it fit with literally the word phenomenal, that he was praised to that level, because whether he does retire soon or in a couple years, that acknowledgement for him is well-deserved. And I don't want to say long-deserved because fans have cheered for him for a long time, but for him to be able to get a moment like that when he hasn't necessarily had like a big WrestleMania moment or anything like that recently, it had to feel good to be AJ Styles and hear the crowd go that crazy for you. Let's move on. We have 4 more matches to cover here. The WWE Women's Championship, Bayley, Naomi, and Tiffany Stratton in a triple threat match. I love how international crowds react to Bayley. They were insane for her on the Backlash kickoff Friday afternoon. And there was a great bit she did where she would walk over and cover Michael Cole's mouth as they sang, "Hey, Bayley." The crowd here was also the first ever to put over Naomi's like single punch gesture that she does. Everyone in the crowd did it with her. Moving to SmackDown. Bayley and the Big Three fought Stratton and Damage Control in an 8-woman tag team match. This opened the show with everyone except Io Sky present. The entrances basically took 9 minutes on their own. Naomi was dressed like the French flag. She looked great. Everyone was wild for Bayley again. Tiffy showed out with her cartwheel Alabama slam. Jade got the hot tag and hit like 4 moves before doing a tandem inverted power slam using Belair off her shoulders. Bayley hit Bayley to belly, and Belair nailed Dakota Kai with Kiss of Death for the win in 10 minutes. Very, very fun. Multiple references to Bayley's past rivalries with Bianca during the match, and of course, the backstage segment, which I'm going to talk about now. Bianca said she's ready for closure on Saturday going up against Damage Control, and she got heated while cutting the promo, turning to point her words toward Bayley, who was in the room with her. Now, we obviously praise Belair all the time here, but this promo was as interesting as she has been and as much personality as she has shown probably in years. I adored the continuity of her not letting Bayley get away with all the shit that she has pulled, despite being willing to team with her in this instance. Now, getting to Backlash. This was second on the card. That was too early for me. I thought it should have been the mid-show main event or the co-main event, but I digress. The women all got sick responses, with the crowd heavily putting over Naomi's music and gestures before serenading Bayley as per usual. This was easily, by the way, the best entrance of Naomi's career, and she's had some excellent ones. There were some cool spots early, including a double jackknife cover by Stratton and a shotgun dropkick during a sunset flip by Tiffy as well. Bayley caught the handspring back elbow, only to eat the cartwheel Alabama slam after a clunky transition. Then she hit Naomi with the back elbow on the barricade, only for Naomi to jump back over the barricade with a neckbreaker on Bayley. Naomi took Tiffy out with Heat Seeker on the apron, plus her split-leg moonsault. Then she pulled her off the ropes for a Liger Bomb into her new submission. That still needs a name. Bayley broke that with an elbow drop, which was really her first significant offense of the entire match. She got Naomi with a sunset flip powerbomb into the ropes and got Tiffy with Bayley to belly. Naomi and Tiffy did multiple cartwheels outside the ring, like in a sequence. That ended with an Alabama slam into the announce table. Then Stratton grabbed Bayley off the apron for the same move. She followed by missing a double prettiest moonsault ever, rolling through only to eat a 3D from the faces in tandem. Moments later, Bayley got into a pinning sequence with Naomi, and she caught her in a tight cover to retain the title. Naomi gave her a respectful hug and kiss after the bell and raised her arm so the French crowd could serenade her one more time, and that was really sweet to see her do that. Now, this was obviously a sudden finish after a sequence of super hot moves and counters, so that did leave a little to be desired. I didn't mind it because it's so rare in WWE, but you do always prefer to get a big climax to a match that was this hot. But Bayley sold her ass off for Naomi and Stratton. The challengers were both given the opportunity to shine even more than the champion. There were a ton of inventive spots, and while the winner was obvious the entire time, they took us on a nice journey to get there. Tiffany was immense, similar coming out party to the one that she had against Becky Lynch in NXT, the second match in particular. She is exceptional. Could have taken a couple more false finishes because you can break falls easily in a triple threat. Probably would have made the match a little bit hotter, but it's tough to argue with what we got here. It was probably, all things considered, the third best match on the show. And I'm right on the line between an A- and an A. I'm just going back and forth. I'm going to say 4 stars, A-, but I am going to watch this again. Might change that grade on Tuesday's WWE show. Let's move to the World Heavyweight Championship. Damian Priest defending against Jey Uso. The entire bloodline stared down Jey while he was warming up backstage, and Paul Heyman walked by shaking his head as well. You'll understand why in a little bit. This was third on the card. It really should have been second to make that interaction a little bit stronger. It would have made more sense if it came after the opening match. Jey entered from the crowd. It was incredibly eye-catching. Fans did the yeet motion with the flashlights on their phone. Priest got an entirely new entrance, including a super cool archery AR graphic. It was a great presentation for him. The song had elements of it that were okay, individual lines. It had lyrics. That was nice, but it was very typical Def Rebel, just not really strong from a musical backing. It lacked soul, the song. Jey did the yeet motion with the crowd like Hulk Hogan until Priest got annoyed. Cool note by Cole that 1 year after he fought Bad Bunny, Priest was here holding the world title at Backlash. Jey dominated the early going until JD McDonough popped up and caught him basically crotch first by the middle rope. Priest speared him for a near fall, then yelled at McDonough that he doesn't want or need his help. Jay caught him with an Uso splash false finish. Priest came back with a razor's edge. Jay escaped south of heaven and hit a spear for another false finish. Finn Balor ran down through the crowd, only to eat a super kick. Priest caught Jay with a lariat and south of heaven off the distraction for another false finish. Priest measured for 2 Trouble in Paradises, but Jay countered a third with 4 super kicks and a second spear, plus Uso splash, only for McDonough to place Priest's foot on the bottom rope, breaking the fall. He got a "fuck you, JD" chant from the crowd. Jay hit him with a tope, then caught Balor running with a ringside spear. Priest then knocked Jay from the top rope and hit Avalanche south of heaven to retain the title in 16 minutes. Balor and McDonough attacked Jay a bit after the bell, only for Priest to forcefully and angrily pull them off. He demanded that they stand next to him to celebrate. Now, it's fair to say this match exceeded my expectations, which were decently low entering it. I still maintain that this felt like a high-energy mid-card title match instead of a world title match. But infusing this with the Judgment Day storytelling not only worked, but protected Jay from yet another singles title loss. He's going to need to win something at some point. Probably a mid-card title. And by the way, it's very similar to LA Knight. He's got to win something at some point. We're pretty confident that Knight is going to go on to win the United States Championship at SummerSlam. Fingers crossed that actually happens. But in terms of Jay, I don't know that there's a clear path for him right now towards the Intercontinental title. So we'll see what happens there. The wrestling was solid across the board. The crowd elevated it beyond what it otherwise would have been. For the match itself, I'm saying 3.5 stars B. And I do factor the audience into that to a degree. There was a lot of interferences. Jay's moveset, it's really frustrating for me. Like, he is a main eventer based on crowd reaction, but he's also a B-side main eventer. And this struggled because Priest is also a B-side main eventer. The other thing with Jay is, like I said, the moveset, if we're meant to take him seriously as a title holder, he needs to have more than 4 moves. He's way too talented and experienced to be that limited. If guys like Cody and John Cena can expand their movesets later in their careers, Jay should be able to as well. It's ridiculous, actually, that he hasn't already. So those are the overall thoughts for that World Championship match. Let's move to the women's tag team title match. The Kabuki Warriors defending against Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. Jade entered decently early and hit 2 twisting knee backbreakers on Kairi Sane. Kairi came back with an awesome top rope crossbody on Bianca outside. Belair did the vast majority of work in the match. Great sequences with both warriors. Sane stopped a hot tag, dropkicking Cargill off the apron, and the champions hit some great double team spots. Kairi saved Asuka from a KOD, then grabbed Bianca's braid, which backfired into a lariat. Jade got the hot tag, hitting a double springboard crossbody plus a choke spinebuster cover on Kairi. Jade ate 4 spinning back fists and a Destino, but Kairi completely screwed up, I think, covering her as the illegal woman. She didn't understand what the referee was telling her. That led to a clunky sequence where Asuka tagged back in, even though she was already legal and didn't need to. The challengers both took simultaneous arm bars, and Jade had both shoulders down way too long with the referee not counting. That has happened before across many promotions and many matches, but it added to the clunkiness that we already discussed. Those submissions got broken with simultaneous lifting power bombs. Then they hit an insane sequence that was an assisted DDT, moved into a turnover German suplex for a false finish. Asuka threw Cargill into the steps. Sane dodged Belair into the post. The champions hit the assisted insane elbow for a broken fall. Jade then caught Kairi flying, put her on her shoulders, twisted her midair, and brought her down into Jaded before Bianca hit KOD on Asuka into Kairi, covering Asuka for the 1-2-3, with new champions being crowned in 18 minutes. Really quick on the finish. I thought the Jaded should have won the match. Everything after that was just unnecessary, but it still worked the way that they did it. There are so many different ways to evaluate this match. I'm going to need to watch it back to determine whether it was Kairi, Asuka, and or the referee that screwed up, but there were 2 separate sequences that were completely out of whack. Either Asuka tagged in too early, or Kairi didn't realize she was tagged. And that took a match that would have otherwise, I would say, over-delivered beyond anything else on the card, meaning it was better than expectation, and it made it a bit of a mixed bag. I'm not sure the last time I have seen a match with this many highs and lows. If we put the screw-ups aside, The rest of the match was tremendous. Everyone knew the titles were changing hands, so the obvious concern was that this would get 8-9 minutes, the Kabuki Warriors would get tossed aside, and that's happened so many times before. That was certainly not the case here. They got nearly 20 minutes. The champions, who now need a name, by the way, they had a number of excellent tandem moves and sequences. Kyrie sold the hell out of Jaded, and the finishing bit was executed perfectly. This was easily the best Jade has looked in the ring throughout her entire career. She's still not all the way there, but progress was apparent. Asuka and Bianca were the MVPs, no surprise there. This is like impossible to grade. I'm going to say 3.25 stars B, but it was far more entertaining than that number indicates. That might actually be a tad too low. And the last match on the card, which obviously opened Backlash, was Kevin Owens and Randy Orton against the Bloodline. Now, Orton, during the Backlash kickoff on a live mic, said he was going to RKO the shit out of those Samoans. It got quite a pop. And then on SmackDown, Orton came out first for the RKO show. And for the first time I can remember in his career, the crowd sang the entire first verse and both choruses of his entrance. It was so sick. He was floored by it and like held his heart. You could like see the emotion there. Also, the RKO graphic was exactly what we talked about. The RKO logo with duct tape over the last two letters. That popped me. They did a bunch of babyface crowd work and got major reactions before Owens said Paul Heyman pestered him all week about being a guest on the show. The fans were loud saying Heyman's introduction with him and then chanted, "We want Roman." And he said he did as well. Then he asked them to back out of the match for themselves and their families so they don't get hurt. Orton asked Heyman, who's the real tribal chief? He went to say there's only one tribal chief when Bloodline suddenly attacked from behind with a brawl ensuing until they were separated. Orton murked a couple security guards and KO did a somersault off the top rope into more security as Bloodline escaped. Solo Sikoa again looked idiotic in the black gloves, especially because his gimmick is that one of his thumbs is loaded and taped up, so his hand is fully taped underneath an open glove. Let me get away from this. This accomplished its task of getting the crowd hyped for Backlash and giving the baby faces multiple big moments in front of the fans. And it also continued the Roman Reigns absentee storyline, which we will talk more about on Tuesday in our weekly WWE episode. These four also brawled at the end of the show, which, just as we mentioned on the Ultimate Preview, was even more reason this match needed some type of stipulation, be it a street fight, falls count anywhere, whatever. It was strange for it to be a regular match, just as it was odd for Styles and LA Knight to be a regular match at WrestleMania. Now, this opened the card, as mentioned, and there may have been like a production issue or something. Maybe Randy was pooping. I don't really know, because Owens stood on the ramp for a good 2 minutes, not doing anything while his music just continued to play. Eventually, Orton's music hit. He got serenaded and mimicked like all of his movements. Legitimate goosebumps from that. Bloodline entered to Solo's music. What I found odd was that Tama Tonga wasn't part of the graphics or anything. Just on the big screen, it was just Solo Sikoa when it's A, Bloodline, and B, both of them. So that was odd. They had a month to update them, so there's really no excuse. It's not like he was a surprise. Luckily, they were not wearing gloves for the match. Fans chanted, "We want Roman," and all four guys went face-to-face brawling before the bell. Tons of referees, suits, and security ran down to separate everyone. KO hit stunners on two security guards. All of a sudden, Nick Aldis comes out, and he decides, this is chaotic. We got to have the match. We got to do something. We're going to make it an anything goes street fight.
Thank you!
There was an awesome picture-in-picture shot showing the guys brawling in different parts of the crowd. Owens did a barricade frog splash on Tonga. Orton teased like he was going to, but he didn't. That made everyone laugh. Batama took two announce table backdrops in a welcome to WWE type of moment. Steel steps, trash cans, and kendo sticks from the faces. Multiple ECW chants from the crowd. KO frog splash Tama off the apron through a table and then screamed in his face. Orton took a Samoan drop through a table in the ring. Tama didn't get any offense until deep in the match. And when he did, he was like an animal, just brutalizing Owens. He got murked with a kendo stick, did a ton of crazy shit. KO countered Solo into a tilted table. Tama got up on him and then stalked him with a chair before Randy emerged for his entire signature sequence, plus an RKO for a broken fall. Sikoa soon got Orton on the announce table, ready for a Samoan spike, but Randy countered it into an RKO. 4 chairs were set up inside, with KO countering a superplex into an avalanche fisherman's buster through them. Out of nowhere, Tonga Loa pulled the referee out of the ring and drove steel steps into both of the baby faces. KO then took a Uranagi into a chair and a Samoan spike for the 1-2-3. After the bell, Paul Heyman crouched over Owens, begging Bloodline not to attack further, as Cole called them a rogue Bloodline making a hostile takeover. We also got an extended shot of KO and Orton in pain after the match, walking to the back. Now, the debut of Tonga Loa was a bit of a sour note at the end of what was simply an incredible and exhilarating opening match. Unlike Tama Tonga, who is a New Japan legend in many regards and has a lot of facial recognition, Tonga Loa is very much just a guy. Lots of folks were expecting Jacob Fatu here, which brought the debut down, I would say, even further, because you didn't just get someone coming out, but it wasn't the person that you expected, and it was someone you don't really recognize. My thought in the moment was that Tonga Loa is someone you debut live on TV, not a PLE. He's just not of that stature. But that said, the fact that WWE was able to keep his signing and debut a secret to that degree was fantastic. And it didn't change my opinion of the rest of the match. But Solo Sikoa at Clash at the Castle, this was not, if that makes sense. But this match was outstanding. There was one point in the latter stages where I was wondering to myself if I might wind up giving it 5 stars, buoyed by the crowd and the atmosphere and all that type of stuff, because it was straight up insane. Every part of this worked, from the pre-match brawl to the execution of the stipulation edition to the wrestling. They just kicked ass in the crowd, at ringside, and in the ring. You felt every big spot. The selling was on point. Tama looked rabid in his debut match. The faces got most of the offense, which is what you want in something like this. And even if the surprise was a bit of a letdown, it was nevertheless newsworthy. Just an excellent opener by any stretch of the imagination. It's an A match, no question about that. A little bit between 4.25 and 4.5 stars, but unlike the other matches, I'm going to lean on the high side. That's how entertaining and exciting this was. 4.5 stars and an A. By the way, for those who don't know, Tonga Loa was actually in WWE before. He was there as Camacho just over a decade ago. Yes, WWE took a Tongan and made him Mexican, just like they took a Samoan and Yokozuna and made him Japanese. So now, Guerrillas of Destiny, 8-time IWGP Tag Team Champions, they are now in WWE. I never would have guessed that. Now, as far as Jacob Fatu goes, we obviously all assumed he would join this version of the Bloodline. What I'm thinking now, just on first blush, is if you have Rock giving Solo orders, that makes 4 of them on that side. Maybe Jacob is who Roman Reigns uses to even the sides. You get Roman and Jimmy and Jay reunite as baby faces. Jacob comes in as their 4th. That would make it 4-on-4. And that could even lead to War Games. Though, let's just be honest, I don't know that we're going to see The Rock in War Games, although it is at the end of the year, after his commitments, from the understanding of his schedule, are over. Now, I don't want to overlook the fact that Tonga Loa debuting is important for the story, but the Jacob Fatu factor is just so important because he is an absolutely incredible wrestler. I mean, the truth is, based on ability and really his promo style too, if you took everyone in the Bloodline and you put them in a group and you said rank them, it would be Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu. And he's not even on TV yet. You haven't seen him yet. You don't necessarily know what this guy can do. So that's why everyone is so excited to see him join the Bloodline. And that's why Tonga Loa's debut, even though it was fine, they didn't do anything wrong. It's just when you're expecting one thing and you get that, it's tough to kind of buy into it as much. I don't want to overlook, and I want to shout out the fan, by the way, that had the perfectly placed "Not My Tribal Chief" sign during this match and at the end of the match when all 3 guys were celebrating in the middle of the ring. I thought that was really cool. Now, moving off of Backlash, the show itself, I want to briefly talk about the kickoff show. I know that's weird, but WWE may have put together the most entertaining kickoff show. They're calling it a countdown show now, but one of the best that they've done in a while. It wasn't anything overly special, but having Big E and CM Punk on the panel, just having fun, that was cool. And there were a lot of takes into France with fresh promos, opportunities to speak to the commentators, hear from the fans. All of those individual hits amped up the intensity and the energy of the show, getting you ready for Backlash. There was also a hysterical moment where Big E actually mentioned Tonga Loa, who is Tama Tonga's brother, as I just said, and he mentioned New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Punk turned his head, like snapped his head at him, and looked like he saw a ghost, because I guess he didn't know what the line is anymore, what you can and can't say on television. And he appreciated that Big E said it and was like, oh, cool, I can say that stuff now. Like, that's good to know. It was a blast seeing that happen. And speaking of that, Michael Cole, way before Tonga Loa even showed up, he didn't just mention New Japan Pro Wrestling. He talked about random wrestlers like Shingo Takagi and Evil, who have never come anywhere near to stepping foot in a WWE ring. He was discussing them during the street fight while talking about Tama Tonga and his run in New Japan. That was wild. There's one other note I wanted to provide you. So Hikuleo is another brother of Tama and Tonga. And WWE reportedly was interested in him a couple of years ago before their free agency even became possible. I don't know what his contract situation is in New Japan. I do know that he just had a match over there, like, I think 24 hours ago. So maybe that was his last match. Maybe he does have longer on his contract and he's not coming over immediately. But if you have both of those brothers in WWE, and Hikuleo, this guy is tall, he's built, I believe he's significantly younger than both of them, would make all the sense in the world for him to join as well. So there's a lot of other pieces that might still get filled in here, especially now that Tonga Loa is over, because he was the unexpected piece, I guess, of the entire deal. One other note before we get to the grades. It said Lyon, France in the upper left-hand corner of the screen throughout the entire show. It distracted me because it wasn't the type of transparent or semi-transparent logo that you can see through, where it's just there, but you don't have to notice it the entire time. It was in white. And it was also there in place of the live emblem. And I don't know that I like not having the live emblem on the screen. I always enjoyed knowing that's the case, even though it doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't add to the broadcast. I just thought it was a little odd that they made that change. One other note, Prime was the ring sponsor. It is going to be for every single premium live event. We know that. To the best of my recollection, outside of there being a Prime cart ringside by the two announce tables, I don't believe any other match or anything else on the show was sponsored. I could be wrong. I might have forgotten or missed something. I don't think that was the case. So that wraps up WWE Backlash, which brings us to the grades portion of the show. We're going to kick off with the pre-show expectation grades on the Ultimate Preview podcast. Vintage Chris Vanini and your boy, the Silver King, Adam Silverstein. We both expected this to be a B show, not just a B show for being a B show, but a B graded show at the end. That was our expectation, given the card, given the build, and everything like that. As for you, our Getting Overheads, you voted in our poll on Twitter. 18.4% said A, 72.4% said B, 9.2% said C, and no one voted D or F. Now, clearly, you know that's a B, but you don't know the numerical grade, and that would be 86 out of 100. So just like Chris and I, you all believed this would be a B show. And I said this on the Ultimate Preview, that Chris and I should have known better, because every single time we go into a B-level WWE Premium Live event, disappointed either in the build or the card or whatever the case might be, we come out having our expectations exceeded, and that definitely happened again. Now, Vintage is not here to give his grade, but he did text me, interestingly enough, while I was doing this segment or getting into this segment. He said he's going to give the show an A-, with the crowd itself pulling it up from a B+. So that is Chris's grade. And usually I go next and we give the fan grades at the end. The listeners are Getting Overheads. I'm going to allow you all to go first and save mine for the end, because we don't have Chris here to explain his grade other than what I just read for you. And your votes came in. There's still technically time left on the poll, but it usually doesn't change that much. 50.7% A+ to A, 43.2% A- to B+, 5.5% B to B minus, and 0.7% C plus to C minus. That averages out to 93.46, which is super interesting based on the grade that I was about to give this show. So 93.46 averages out technically to a 94 if you averaged it all the way up. And that's exactly where I am. Because if this was in an American city with a regular but hot crowd, let's call it Boston, just as an example. And I hate that I use that as an example, given I'm mostly a New York sports fan, except for the Miami Dolphins. But let's make believe it's a city like Boston. We would probably come out of this saying it was an A- premium live event, probably like a 90 or something like that. This crowd was so immense that it not only lifted the overall atmosphere of the show, it lifted many of the matches themselves on an individual basis. And when I look at the matches, I have an A+, I have an A, I have an A-, and 2 very solid Bs. So I literally was in my head thinking, this is a 93 out of 100. That was the number I had, which is an A. It's the lowest end of an A, but it is an A nonetheless. So while it might have the same letter grade that we would give another show, it doesn't necessarily mean from a numerical grading standpoint that we believe it to be as good as those other shows. It was only 5 matches. It was immensely predictable. We picked every winner. That doesn't make us special. It's just what the case was. Outside of Tonga Loa, there weren't any surprises. There were rumors that John Cena might be there. There was thought that we might get the unveiling of Nightbird and whatever that's going to be with Uncle Howdy, the Wyatt 5, Wyatt 6, whatever that is. There was a QR code, by the way, on the show. I'm not going to talk about it now just for timing reasons. We'll save that for Tuesday's WWE show. But really none of that happened. That said, again, everything that we got over-delivered, and the main event was exceptional. So that's where I sit. 93 out of 100, a flat A. Now, I do have a couple additional thoughts on the way out. First is, I know we said last year on this exact show that Puerto Rico should get a WWE event annually. And they were great for Backlash 2023. Nothing against them. Don't get me wrong. I think everyone would be okay if Puerto Rico got a SmackDown every year. That's fine. France needs a premium live event every year. And you know what? There's something about Backlash thematically that seems to make sense. You can rotate it between the 3 major cities: Paris, Lyon, Marseille, I assume, is the third. I don't know if that has an arena like this. Maybe Nice does. You could rotate it. You could just go back and forth between Paris and Lyon. You could just do it in Lyon. This is a brand new arena. It's only been open, I believe, for a few months that they ran in on this show. And it was phenomenal. I hate to use that word again because I'm not using it ironically. I mean it. It was legitimately phenomenal. I think once a year, and you have to exclude house shows, right? So don't do other WWE live events there during the year. Tour Italy and England and wherever else you want to go, Germany. But for France, every year they get Backlash in May. I think if you made this an annual thing, it could be explosive. And I hope they get that opportunity. And it's not a situation where WWE feels like they need to do a rotation and they don't come back here for another 4 years. This crowd was exceptional. Like I said at the start of the show, an argument as the best crowd in WWE history and one of the best in professional wrestling history. That is absolutely wild. The other topic I wanted to discuss, just because we're in a rare situation where we have a podcast here before Monday Night Raw, and there's an announcement related to Raw that is worth discussing. So WWE announced the Raw side of the bracket for King and Queen of the Ring. And the best news possible right off the jump is that both brackets, the men and the women, are involving 16 superstars. I don't know how long you, the listener right now, have heard me talk about professional wrestling in WWE, but I've done it across 3 different podcasts. And through my time on those 3 podcasts, including this one, which of course is the first one where I've been the host, I have been begging WWE to bring back King of the Ring and institute Queen of the Ring. And during this time, we've had some teases where they've done it, but it hasn't been done well, or they've executed it and it's been a small bracket, but maybe the matches at the end were good. This field and this structure and the fact that they're doing it as a named premium live event and not part of another one or something that is restricted to TV only, it's music to my ears. It's everything I have wanted from WWE for a premium live event in a long time. And we spent the last 2 episodes of the podcast talking about how do we as fans get to finish our story from WWE. This is one of those elements that helps the Silver King finish his story.
With a tear in my eye.
And what's perhaps, I don't want to say even better, but equally as good as the fact that they're doing 16-person tournaments for the men and the women is the lineup for Raw on Monday night. And I have no effing idea how they are going to fit this in the show because they have 8 first-round matches scheduled for Raw this Monday. Let's start with the women for Queen of the Ring. Zelina Vega against Shayna Baszler. I think we all know Baszler's probably going to win that. Zoe Stark against Ivy Nile. Same thing, Stark over Nile. Lyra Valkyria against Asuka. It's possible they could have Lyra go over there. Asuka really should win that match. Io Sky against Natalya. Io Sky definitely has to win that match. Now, if that is what transpires, you're talking about 4 heels. And that's why I think there might be something a little interesting with Asuka and Lyra put over a debuting babyface. That is possible. That could happen. Maybe Zelina upsets Shayna. Just don't really think it's going to happen. The reason why I wanted to discuss the women first is not that the women's match, or bracket, I should say, is lacking. It's not. But the men's bracket is absolutely ridiculous. Okay? These are the 4 men's matches. Kofi Kingston against Rey Mysterio. Just super excited to see that transpire. Drew McIntyre against Finn Balor. On one hand, amazing match. On the other, hate that Finn Balor is going to lose in the first round of King of the Ring when we want this guy to be World Heavyweight Champion at a minimum at some point in 2024. But McIntyre and Balor, that's going to be immense. But you know what? Now that I think about it, it's quite possible CM Punk comes in, costs McIntyre the match. Or maybe Sheamus does. There's a lot of different options. So maybe I shouldn't write that completely off, but I did want to mention that as my first blush opinion. Then, Ilya Dragunov against Ricochet. Holy shit, that is going to be an absolute
Banger.
And speaking of
Banger.
the main event of Raw, I have to believe, on Monday night, Gunther against Sheamus.
Oh, we got 2 big meaty men bumping me tonight.
I don't even know what else there is to say.
Big meaty men slapping me. That's what I want. This is Monday Night Meat.
I cannot believe they're doing this on free television. And let me tell you what pisses me off to a degree. Raw, and by the way, Dynamite and SmackDown as well this week, all 3 shows, but Raw in particular, given this lineup, is going head-to-head with the Knicks-Pacers series. Game 1 in New York. I am a New York Knicks fan. Is head-to-head with Raw on Monday night. I don't know how I can watch this live. I think I have to watch the basketball game. It's the playoffs. What the hell is the Silver King going to do? Folks, I am floored by this lineup. The fact that I have to do these 2 things at once. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when Tuesday's show is going to get published, when I'm going to be able to finish Raw on Monday night. Long story short, Monday is going to be crazy for yours truly, and probably a lot of you listening out there as well. And one other item, right as we were finishing up taping this podcast, WWE during the Kentucky Derby announced that WrestleMania 41 will be held in Las Vegas. Yes, Minneapolis, Minnesota getting screwed once again. WrestleMania 41 will be held in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium, April 19th and 20th. Now, we have gone over potential WrestleMania dates here on the podcast over the last few episodes. Nick Khan said that he does not want WrestleMania going head to head with the Final Four. So Vintage and I went back and forth with when it could actually be held. The week after the Final Four is the Masters, the biggest golf tournament in the world every single year. That didn't make sense. The last week of April is the NFL draft. That doesn't make sense. And then going into May, you have the NBA playoffs already beginning with usually round 2, the first weekend in May. So I told Vintage there is one weekend in April that WWE should hold WrestleMania where it would have no major competition, the third week. And that is exactly where they are putting the show. There was thought it might be the first weekend in May. Nope. They're doing it the third weekend in April, the exact weekend it should be. We're going to go Final Four, Masters, WrestleMania, NFL Draft, 4 straight weeks in April next year. That is outstanding. We will discuss this in much greater detail on Tuesday's WWE episode. All right, let's wrap up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. As always, appreciate everyone for listening immediately after WWE Backlash. First, allow me to remind you that this show
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can vote in our pre- and post-show polls surrounding premium live events and pay-per-views, and where you can send in questions and comments for the show along with last word questions for the WWE edition of the podcast. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Over head. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown every single week, along with exclusive news posts on Fridays. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We have a loaded week ahead. Another WWE episode coming on Tuesday, where we're going to break down everything else that happened on SmackDown, and of course discuss the entirety of Monday Night Raw. Then we'll be back on Thursday with our NXT and AEW show. Love you all for being listeners of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. For Vintage Chris Vanini, briefly, this is the Silver King Adam Silverstein signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.